Hey, everybody, welcome back to Gramophone Live. We are here for our next exciting live session, and we really enjoy doing these because they're just fun. And we can have great conversations, talk about fun new stuff that's coming out. And fun new stuff is precisely why we're here tonight. Joining me is Christopher Sharp from Sonos, because we have just seen the launch of the new Era series from Sonos, and they're awesome. And you know what? Chris is pretty awesome too, because he decided to come all the way out here and chat with us about them. And on that note of exciting news, let me drop this little tidbit with you guys before we get into it here. We at Gramophone have some exciting news too. Coming in May, the Gramophone Experience Center. It will be our 5th showroom, positioned actually, and very conveniently, I might say, right next to our existing Timonium showroom. And it's going to be full of all brand new things, some of it really high end and awesome, and some of it just stuff you've probably never seen before in the worlds of automation, audio, video, all of it. We're really excited about it. So we can't wait to get everyone into the new Experience Center. And yeah, I mean, it's aptly named. It's going to be an experience. But we're here for Sonos tonight. So let's get back to that. Chris,
Hi,
thanks for coming, man.
thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
appreciate that. I want to start off by saying I actually have seen a sneak peek of that showroom. Definitely swing by and check it out. It is stellar, honestly. It really, really is cool.
Thanks,
One of the
man.
best ones I've seen, and I've been doing this a while.
Awesome. Thank you.
I also want to thank the people that I've seen come across the screen. Really appreciate you giving us a hi. I think I saw something like Dan the Man on there. So appreciate you guys. And I just want to kick this off by saying thank you so much for having me here. I actually haven't really done a live stream like this before, so this is a whole new venture, not just for Sonos and what we're doing with this, but also for me too.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to your first live stream.
Thank you.
So, for starters, how about this? Chris, can you give myself and all of our viewers here a little bit of background on you and just your experience in the industry in general, and then we'll get into your experience with Sonos.
Yeah. So I've been in the industry, I guess now probably almost 12 years.
Nice.
Longer than I thought, for sure. I started with as a designer and seller of audio, which is actually how I got introduced into Sonos, and then found my way into an account manager position now through multiple roles over the last 6 years at Sonos. And fun story for all you guys out there. The way I actually ended up being involved with Sonos was interesting because I will say it was a brand that I was obviously acutely aware of dealing with it in my day to day.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how much the brand had matriculated out into like the actual, populace. And when I had applied to work there, within a couple hours, I ended up calling my dad to check in and, tell him about what I was about to do. And he started the conversation off by saying, "Hey, have you ever heard of this company called Sonos? I just checked them out today." And I was like, "It is really funny you bring that up because yes, I have, and I may work for them." And lo and behold, here we are 6 years later, or almost 6 years.
Talk about a good omen.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that is really cool.
For watching, thank you.
So 6 years at Sonos.
Yes.
Been fun?
Yo, man, it's been a blast. This is a company that cares not just about what we're doing for audio as a whole, but we care about our people. We care about the environment. We have a lot of things that are really important to us, and it really shows through on our day to day. So yes, it's been a blast, and I love what I do.
That's awesome.
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's really great to hear, in fact. So, the Sonos Era, whole new era, I was going to do it, of products. And they're all very familiar, yet different. And the familiarities are the awesome ones, and the differences just take these and to another level.
Yes.
With some of the things that Sonos is embracing now, stuff that really is kind of this new decade with spatial audio and some other things that we're going to talk about. So, on that note, Chris, what would you say? How would you describe, or how would Sonos describe, I should say, the vision or the why of why go from a 1 and a 5, for example, to an Era 100, an Era 300, and whatever else might be yet to come?
That's a really good question, and it's actually one that I constantly think about myself because if you aren't aware, we are still keeping the 1 and the 5, so it is still part of our lineup. So
Gotcha.
This isn't a should I go to one or upgrade to the other. This is kind of figuring out what I need as an audio solution, figuring out what aspects of audio I'm trying to listen to in a space or what I'm trying to accomplish, and then deciding which speaker kind of fits that. So we wanted to offer a little bit more of an opportunity to fill a different spectrums of sound. And
Hmm.
in this case, we really wanted to kind of follow where the evolution of audio is going. So obviously we have the Era 300 over here, which we'll dive into a little bit more, but that's the bigger like jump for us in the evolution of audio. But even starting with the little one here, Era 100, when you're comparing it to the Sonos One, our goal here was just to create something that sounded bigger in a room, not necessarily louder, but something that was a little bit more room filling and gave you a little bit more semblance of this evolution from mono to stereo.
Sounds like it makes sense to me because it's like you think the one, the one is kind of a legend because it kind of started the idea of like the smart speaker as far as I'm concerned. And that's the thing that if anyone's going to have Sonos, they probably at least have a one. Some good friends of mine come to mind. Like that's what they have. They have just one Sonos one, but they got it. And that'll just sit in the kitchen and fill the background. So the idea that you can take something in that footprint and just more, like,
Yep.
that's already a big step.
I think so too. And I'll be honest, like it looks like all we did is just added a little extra hardware, but I promise you there's a lot more that went into this to create that more. So this, again, it isn't about volume. This is about filling a space properly and trying to recreate what the artist's intent is. And that's artists for both music and movies.
Oh, absolutely.
Or podcast.
It's funny. We did some YouTube videos that some of you may have watched already on the Era series, and I just totally messed up and didn't catch it. I said this had 2 woofers instead of 2 tweeters, and I got drug in that for the comments, and I was like, oh no, I did not catch that. I said woofer.
It's okay. You got it right on that one, so you're okay.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, this is the one where you get like real spatial.
Correct.
But on that note, just going back to that simple change and putting an angle into it is just like, oh wow, that looks kind of like a one, but the sound stage and the fill is just next level.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that I find kind of interesting about what we do, because I've obviously been around long enough. I've listened to all the products more than probably most have, even though those who have been around 20 years as a owner of Sonos, because we've been at least having a product since almost back then. But when we were doing a comparison between this one and the Sonos One, I constantly was doing that as a back and forth to kind of get my head around what we were trying to accomplish, because obviously I'm not the engineer. I'm not the one that actually built this from the ground up, but I am luckily the one that gets to go into the field and talk about it all the time. So I think I have the better job, honestly. But when I am comparing this to Sonos One, and you're going back and forth, the One to me has always been the staple. It has been, if you're looking at our evolution on it, we started with the Play One years ago.
Yep.
We updated the Sonos One in 2017, and we really haven't done much to it because, quite frankly, there wasn't a reason to rock a boat that was doing really, really well. But when you go back and forth and listen to this one, you do obviously see the big difference in what this provides. And I will never say anything bad about the Sonos One because I, quite frankly, love it, and I love everything we've done with it. But it does show how the audio is more condensed into that kind of front of view.
Yeah, it's more just.
Yes. Whereas on this one, it really is opened up and it's a completely different sound. And when you actually hear both of them side by side, or even in a room, if you could, come down to, like, say, Gramophone and see their any one of their showrooms, you'll be able to see a demonstration like that. When you really do hear what that difference is, it really does show like what we're doing next. And this is so much bigger. So it really is just a massive difference. So little things add to big things.
So with Sono, with the One and now the Era 100, I'd say that there is, and this really applies to all of them, but we kind of start here, a philosophy to Sonos about how sound is kind of a constant in our lives, and in each of our rooms, potentially, we should have an option to fill that up with something that we want to hear, because music can be therapeutic. What's like Sonos's philosophy, getting into that like deep theory of music and listening?
Without going too far into the weeds with this, because honestly, I could talk about this all day. But you're absolutely right. Like, when you're looking at what music does for people, it's why you walk into certain restaurants or bars or anything like that, because you're hearing what's playing and it kind of draws you in. It's the atmosphere that sets in a lot of places that you're going. There's always, you go into a retail store, they're always trying to play music because, again, that's the atmosphere. When you go home, even if you don't think about the fact that you're doing it, even turning on TV sound is still part of that kind of audio immersing you. And it's because it is therapeutic. It is something that's important. And for us, we view it as something that is part of our day-to-day, no matter kind of what aspect you do with it. If you're listening to it on a car, or you're going for a run on headphones, or, you're listening to one of our home theater setups, you're still involved with audio. And so it's, you can't get away from it. And so our philosophy on it is, this is something that is important. This is something that offers a lot of benefits. And quite frankly, we want to make sure that, if we are doing something in this space, we're going to do it well, because it is so important. So our philosophy is, it's important. We got to be doing something with it.
Makes sense to me. And sound is important. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We did see a comment come through from Bryce. Thank you, Bryce. That was a very nice comment. I think that was addressed to you there, Chris. Can we put that back up for a second?
Yeah, I saw it for a split second. I like being called sir.
Good work, sir, Chris. Look forward to catching up when I see you next. I look forward to seeing the super new Experience Center Team Gramophone. Oh, it won't disappoint, I promise. And thank you. You know, with the whole philosophy of listening thing, I think it's fascinating because I don't really like throwing out numbers on a statistic I just recently read because who knows. But I think it's safe to say, do some research. The vast majority of people of just about any age group basically use music almost therapeutically.
Mhm.
I know I do.
Yes.
And on top of that, music is also a good motivator or just something to keep you focused or keep you going. Like, why do we work out to something that's just hype? Because it gets you going. And I think the idea of like what Sonos did with the One, making it more accessible to just say, play this somewhere, you know, even if it's not a massive hi-fi system, just something, anything, that can be really useful.
It can. And actually, that's what kind of gave us the foundation on our evolution to this piece, too, is because we do understand that. We wanted something that if you're going to use it all the time, we wanted it to be somewhere that you could interact with it as much as you needed to in different ways and be something that, again, you're going to use in those different variations that you want to be able to use it in.
Yeah. So going forward, we'll get into the Era 300 here a little bit too. But I want to talk about just some of the details. You know, that's kind of the philosophy of sound, right? Just why does Sonos do what they do? But specifically details about the Era products. What did we want to change or elevate about the experience in designing these as opposed to the previous?
So we were, you know, it's something that we always do. We're always looking ahead. We're always analyzing what's happening, where the trends are, if they are trends or something that looks like it's going to be more of an actual evolution. And so we assess all of this. And our real goal with these is to really capture on that evolution from which you've seen before historically with like mono to stereo. So we wanted to kind of take that and add that to the Era 100 and then take it one step further with the Era 300 and go more into that spatial audio or 3D audio, however you want to call it, because there's different terms for different people on there. But we wanted to see what we could do to play in that space and see if it's something that we can deliver our level of experience on. And I'm proud to say that we did. So
awesome.
Very happy with it.
So if we, for example, specifically talk a little bit more about the Era 300, because this is where this ideal of spatial audio really shows off a little bit more. Yeah, the 100 is kind of like taking a one and making a super one because it's wider, it's bolder. But this is where you really get into a grander, actual marketed spatial audio experience, right?
Yep.
So say we, just to give our folks listening and watching something to compare against, let's take the 5, the most recent iteration of the 5, put that next to an Era 300. What really are we going to expect to be a little bit different here? Why would someone maybe want to, not necessarily like upgrade and throw away or sell off their 5, but why would they want to add a 300? What are you going to get new here that's going to really usher in for that person the new era of Sonos?
My head just flooded with all of the answers, so I'll keep it surface level, and if anyone has any questions on technical, we can definitely drill down into it. Or if you
let me cut you off for 1 second because I just saw that. Anthem73 says, when are the new products launching?
Oh, I guess we never started off by saying why we're here in the first place. We're here because these actually are launching today. So these are available. You can actually go into Sky Gramophone or anywhere else you want to buy them and purchase them right then and there.
I think today is also the day where we could take the tape off our mouths, right?
Yes. I can actually share things other than, hey, I have 2 new speakers and one of them does a really cool audio performance that we haven't really tackled before.
Awesome.
So yes, now we can really get into the nitty gritty, which is why if you have any technical questions, do not be afraid to share those across the screen because I'm happy to answer what I can. But I will say, we got another one. Will music that does not yet have support for spatial audio, Spotify, still have a noticeable room filling sound on the 300? Will my Apple Music library sound better than Spotify?
That's an excellent question.
That is an excellent question. So the answer is yes. It's just a matter of one. So if you're comparing it to the 5, which is a great way to circle. So thank you. It's a great way to circle back to your actual question. And I'll link the 2 together. When you're looking at this compared to the 5, it really is just different. So there isn't a and B, or why would I go for one or the other, or why would I upgrade from one? Because it isn't an upgrade. It's a choice of design. And on this one, it's the same amount of drivers that we're talking about in the 5. The difference is the orientation. So on a 5, they're all placed in front of you. Our goal is to create a massive range, room-filling sound, but it's still within, a sound array that's coming directly at you, where the alignment on this one or the arrangement is everywhere. So when you're listening to, say, your previous Apple Music library or your Spotify, even if they're not Atmos music, we're still using all of those drivers. So they're not turned off just because we're not using the height on this because there's no Atmos content. It's still being engaged. It's just helping fulfill the purpose of that stereo that you're listening to already. So what you're really getting is an even deeper, bigger sound that fills a room even more.
Makes sense. When I got a little bit of time to play with this, and it was obviously spatial content, of course, sounds better on it because, well, that's literally what it's made for. So obviously going to know exactly what to do with it. But I did notice that, say, again, if we're comparing against a 5, much like this compared against a 1, it just gets wider, fuller, forgive me, but better. Just more.
Like I said, it's a little bit different. It's hard to compare these because if you really look at it, we actually went from the ground up and just redesigned everything. So there isn't too much that's similar between, say, the 1 and this particular Era 100 or the 5 and that one. These are just new category introductions into what we're doing.
Awesome. So with the Era 300, what went into the design process for this, and what really turned Sonos on to, hey, spatial audio? Let's talk about that.
Right. I will say it is really great that we got into something early. I love when we get to do that. And in this case, for us, we were watching the trends that are happening in the market. And if you start to look at some of the statistics that are out there, you'll realize that Atmos is actually a lot more prevalent than you would realize just as, putzing around and noticing things. So like if you were to go to a local theater, normally now there's some additional theater added to it where you have to pay a little extra price. That's because it's an Atmos theater. So we're adding that not just with movies being released, but if you're looking at streaming, like Netflix has put over like 700 something movies in the last year, or not last year, but in their existence, but they put over 700 titles now that all feature Atmos in some capacity. And I say that because there's different variations obviously in Atmos. But you're looking at even music. So like if you look at the Grammys more recently, I think majority of the people that either won or were nominated were all coming from Atmos generated content. And that's not just exclusive to, because I know that there's an entire genre in and the Grammys that is dedicated to people that are doing like surround sound audio specifically, but even top song, top album, stuff like that are all still playing into the space. And so you're seeing a lot of people transition into it. And if you start to ask normal people, like, what are you listening to today? What would you like to do it to? They're all somehow aware of Atmos. If it's not through Netflix or Spotify, some content that they're using to stream it on, they're aware that that's happening. And so for us, we wanted to get ahead of that trend. So we wanted to say, hey, if 30% of the people are already either aware of this or doing it, then it's a good time to get involved with it now.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the Era 300 is, it's taking the category established by the 5, but just reinventing it with this new theory and now this new execution.
Yes.
Oh, we got a comment. Are all of the drivers engaged when playing regular music, non-Atmos or non-spatial? Another excellent question.
Do you know the answer?
I actually do not. I think the answer is yes, but I don't.
So that is the beauty of who we are. All drivers are always engaged no matter what you're listening to, even if it's, an arc where I'm doing 5-channel out of it directly, or I add rears. I'm not just saying, okay, the arc, you're not going to use these 2 side drivers anymore because I have the rears doing the job for you. Those are all just dedicated to doing the front 3. Same thing when I'm using this, even though I'm not using the height because Atmos doesn't technically require a height direction. We're now using it to amplify what you're getting out of the sides and the front. So yes, every driver is engaged, and that's why it gives you such a big room filling sound. And a huge sound range to boot on top of it.
Fantastic. So the Era 300, what can folks, now that this is ready to go and hit the market, what can folks expect to pay for an Era 300 if they want to experience some spatial audio in their rooms?
So that's the best part. In my opinion, when you're looking at something that fulfills this kind of need, there are a lot of ranges of systems you can go with. But at $445, I think this finds itself in a very great spot where you can honestly, you can almost put this in multiple rooms, not just one room. It's not like I just need a dedicated media room and going that way, which I will never shy anyone away from. Still an awesome solution, but this really is more something you can use in a lot more spaces, and that is because it comes in at $449.
Awesome, and I'd say that's a really fair price. That's no worse than a 5. That might actually be less.
It is. Less comes in at, or the 5 comes in less at $549. So yes.
Well, go figure. You can get something that's newer technology, new experience, and it's more affordable in an age where everything is like 50% more expensive. So that's actually a tremendous relief.
Yes, when it comes to that kind of stuff, we are very aware of what we're doing. We're very deliberate in a lot of our choices, and it's because we understand where the world is at different times and what we bring to it.
Well, thank you for offering some relief and for once not a sticker shock. So that's the bones on Era 300, but let's talk a
Yes.
bit more about 100. We were getting into him a little bit earlier,
Yeah, we
but there's
definitely
some more
deviated.
here. Yeah. So 100 is a little bit less going on with the spatial aspect, of course, just because smaller footprint here. But now we're getting a speaker that's roughly the size of the one, yet it's closer to a true stereo experience.
Yes. The reason we're able to deliver on that is if you're looking at it as a comparison to the one has one circular driver or woofer in this case, and then one tweeter on top. In this case, we actually changed the shape of our woofer, made it a little bit bigger on this one, and then added 2 tweeters, which is just a lot of tech talk to say that we're now kind of creating a semblance of left and right. So what you're getting is a more of a staging. So you're hearing things more discreetly on the left and right than you would if you had something that was just a single driver coming at you from the front.
Makes sense to me. And with the design of the Era 100, other than just what's changed in the drivers and just from what you can immediately perceive in the shape of it, what's going on internally, like in terms of, is there anything going on waveguide wise or positioning? What's up with the amplifiers? Like, what's the nitty gritty here?
Okay. I'll touch on some of it because I don't know if anyone who is
We're not going to
watching.
get too into the weeds, but a little something.
Well, it's just not something we share that often.
Yeah.
Which means I don't have all of it as a knowledge base for me, but I can tell you what I do know. And I will start off by, I mean, you're probably familiar with how we use all of our drivers, but we power them all with D-class amps. So it's the same here. The difference is that or not difference, but what you find with us is that every single driver, woofer, tweeter, doesn't matter what it is, all has its own amp attached to it. So you are getting that extra little additional power, which is why we can sound so good in a room, no matter what size we're talking about. On this one in particular, we are really focused on the waveguide. And I won't say too much on it because I don't understand all of the science on it, and I don't want to misrepresent what my engineers did. But I will say that they actually designed a very unique grill pattern underneath this grill. So not the actual shell grill, but there's another one actually underneath it that is overlaid on the woofer itself. And what it's designed to do is create a larger staging than it could on its own and do that in a way without any interference. So even though it's in front of it, it doesn't actually interfere with the sound in any way. So you're actually getting a bigger staging than you would if it was just by itself.
So would it be roughly accurate to just say it basically uses a waveguide?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, I think, again.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah. Sorry.
which for those of you who don't know, when it comes to just general speaker design, the idea of using a really well implemented waveguide is actually really effective. It can be almost like having an entirely different tweeters, which you usually put them on, because that's how much it can influence.
Correct. And in this case, if you're comparing it to the one and you're looking at this size-wise, they're very identical. Other than this one's just a little bit slimmer and a little bit taller, but I think by volume they're damn near similar. Excuse my French. I'm just that emphatic about what we do. But you can definitely hear the difference. So this is something that is much more staged than the one is. Again, never going to overshadow the one. I still love it. It's still high up there as a pinnacle of what we've done. This is just something that does it a little bit different. And it really goes the extra mile to make sure that we do that different really, really well.
And you can hear that pretty quickly. Like, halfway one song in, I'm like, yeah, this is doing some things that one doesn't.
Yep.
And also with these products, on the software side, what changes have been made? What changes have been made in the software side or just the operation of the hardware from the touch panel here? These seem to run, dare I say, a little smoother. I especially thought the volume adjustment was like uber precise. Like I was actually very impressed with this tracking.
I appreciate that. And we've done, we do a lot of work to make sure of that, because like we were kind of hinting at earlier, we wanted this to be something that could be applicable to anyone in any situations of I pull up my phone or I use any of the voice controllers are enabled on it, or I just want to interact with it actually tactily, I can still do all that. So for us, if you're talking about software and talking about some more of the less hardware features, so not the actual driver changes, but the actual what we feature in. One, you're absolutely right. We did change the volume on it. So now there actually is a slider on top. For those that are still really comfortable with the way we used to do it, there are still the button presses on the end. So, we never really try to get rid of old. We just try to add new. So in this case, we do have the volume slider. I will say, just as a note, that volume slider is not, and this is the small attention to detail that I love that we do, but this isn't a 0 to 100. because most people don't want to adjust it with one finger sweep and go up 80% of the volume or down. They want to do just a slight adjustment. So for us, if you really want to go all the way from 0 up to 100, you got to almost do it like 4.5, 5.5 times, because it is only doing small adjustments at a time. That is how a customer would want to use it. So we're thinking about all these things all the time. We still kept a microphone in it, so that is still something that you'll find. And if you went through his video earlier on the actual unboxing of both of these, you'll know that the feature list is almost identical on them. And yes, we kept the microphone. What we've done a little bit different is how you interact with it. So historically, we have a button that is the microphone button on top, and that is the turn off, turn on microphone. And you can tell when it's off or on because the light's off or on. What we've learned is, that isn't always something people either pay attention to or are just not aware of, that that's what it's actually doing, or there's just some sort of comfortability with actually having something a little more tactile as a response than just saying, I hope it pressed it. Knowing all of that and knowing how much we take privacy is a big concern for us. What we did is we left that button alone, but we changed it to a services on and off. So that way the microphone can turn on, but now I'm muting all the voice services if I want to, which I can choose not to enable anyway. But that means that I can still use the microphone for our TruePlay, which is another update we've actually done in combination with these guys. And then we actually moved the microphone on and off to the back. So now there's an actual hard switch, which I love because it gives you that clicky noise. And to me, that's like a light switch noise. Like, when you hear that, like you're turning something off. So it's just that more of an understanding and comfort level that that's what we're actually doing. And then some of the other things we did, like I said, we did update TruePlay. So TruePlay on this used to be just walk around the room, kind of like a Ghostbuster. So one of my favorite things to do is a demo, because people are like, what are you doing when you're setting it up? But what we're doing is literally using the microphone tone from here, or the speaker tone from here, and combining it with the microphone phone in your specifically iOS device. And you're walking around the room and you're just taking essentially a snapshot to create a custom DSP for the space. We've now altered that where that still exists. We're just now naming it advanced tuning, and then adding a second one called quick tuning, which is now using the onboard microphone to do the same things. Instead of walking around the room and getting more of a snapshot because you're in different spaces, I'm just using this and getting the reverberations off each surface to
at least deal with some boundary issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the last things that we did that are really different on this than anything else we've done before really came from you all, the customers. So we asked, like, what are the things that we aren't doing that we should be doing? It's a question we're constantly asking. And yes, we will get Last Mohicans someday on here, I swear.
That is a great choice, by the way.
That is, yeah. That person has reached out to me before. That is their go-to demo track. So thank you for sharing that with everyone.
I kind of want to go listen to it now, because like it is one of those tracks.
It really is, and it does build. And there's a couple, actually, if you want, at the end we can share a couple of the recommendations I have that are just kind of examples like that. We'll start with the Last Mohican, so make sure you add that to your playlist, and then we'll kind of tack on a few more. But the last thing I was going to say is so after doing all those tactile updates, we also took feedback from you all. And some of the stuff that you came back with was things that we thought we didn't need to do anymore because Wi-Fi had kind of proven that that's the way to go. But people still really love Bluetooth. And so for us, we want to make sure we're still engaged in that space. We also want to make sure that we're giving you as many options as possible to interact with our system. So what we've done is we actually turned both of these into Bluetooth-enabled speakers. And there's a button on the back to activate it. So if I turn it on, the light on the front goes blue. Blue means Bluetooth. If it goes back to white, when I press it again, white means Wi-Fi. So blue Bluetooth, white Wi-Fi. And so I'm able to do that. The difference is on, like, say, Move, which has that Bluetooth, it is one device, one speaker, and that is it. That is its own little smaller ecosystem. When I go back to Wi-Fi, obviously you can integrate with everything else. On these, that Bluetooth actually acts as a line in. So when I'm on Bluetooth, it shows up as a source in my Sonos app. And so if I have somewhere and I don't want to have to go through the whole process of getting them on my Wi-Fi or getting them on my app or any of that kind of stuff, all they have to do is just pull up the whatever playlist they want to play, Bluetooth connect to it, and then I can share it with the entire room of rooms that I have all joined into one. So I can actually use it as a line in. And then we also have an actual line in, not just a Bluetooth one, but an actual hardline version of it. And that's the USB-C that you see at the bottom here. And so we're trying to interface now with turntables, CD players, whatever you want to interface this with. And so that's now our input for it. And fun fact, the reason we use USB-C is because we want to be able to adapt to future technologies. And this one gives us a lot of road to work with on that one. So right now we're going to offer a couple different dongle options that'll go from like USB-C to 3.5. And then the other one will be USB-C to 3.5 and Ethernet. So that way I can still hardline that in, because if you guys were all eagle-eyed there, you'll notice that there actually isn't an Ethernet port on these. But you can still go that direction if you want. But yeah, so we're now using that 3.5 into the USB-C, or just USB-C into directly, like from a computer, and you can now take whatever you want and bring it into our system.
That's awesome. One of the things. Oh, before I get into that, let me first say this. This is extremely important, and those of you who have watched me for as long as you may have will know this. I need to thank you for using USB-C on behalf of all tech enthusiasts and people who enjoy quiet and peaceable lives.
It's my pleasure.
So thank you.
Promise, it's little things that we do, but we are always trying to do better. And so we're always researching, asking the questions, probing, and that we're learning.
Oh, that's like one of my first things. Like I open up anything that can be considered an electronic, and if I see micro USB on it, it nearly goes in the trash. I've had it.
That's fair. That's fair.
With that though, Bluetooth, USB-C, that's an adaptable USB-C, whether it be Ethernet, whether it be for literally doing a good old fashioned analog AUX in. I remember those days of just getting in the car, AUX in.
Yep.
And
me too.
Also just direct data from USB-C, correct?
Yes.
Did I hear you right?
Yes. So if I have like a lot of laptops nowadays are using USB-C out as their ports, you can go directly into this from that. So
between that, all those options, Bluetooth, physical tactile switches, especially for the mic cutoff, which just peace of mind for some folks, because some folks legitimately have a reason to be worried about that. It's really like the way that I somewhat alluded to this in the earlier videos was Sonos has always been, I think, at the top of your game of smart speakers, great wireless solutions with bulletproof software that some of you are going to hate me for this comparison. I'm sorry. It's almost like an Apple-esque experience, just incredibly well put together. However you feel about Apple, I understand. But my one criticism is too strong a word, but my one thing about Sonos has been, until now, it was a bit of a walled garden.
It was a bit of a what?
Walled garden.
A walled garden, meaning?
That you could only use the Sonos environment to make the speaker do what you wanted to do. There was no Bluetooth. There was no aux in. Now there is.
Yep.
The walls have come down a little bit, or at least now there are doors on them. Oh, you have options now.
Yes.
And I feel like Sonos as a company heard the cry of many people in that. So I think that's another thing that you guys as a whole company should be congratulated for. You just made these infinitely more accessible and user-friendly for niche situations that call for it.
I appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. And I say that on behalf of the whole company, but also myself. And honestly, what that starts with is you guys. So like, give us feedback. There is not one wrong thing, because if one person says it, that's cool. But if 100 people are saying the same thing, clearly there's a trend that we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
Or taking more seriously if we already are. So like, there's a lot of things that, are open to us in the future. And I think you guys helping us kind of navigate that is a huge ask, but it's also a huge, thank you when you start to see those things come to life.
Now, Sonos, as it has been, even so, has been so good at what it does that it really hasn't been an issue for you guys. And I won't say any names, but I can already think of a list of products just bouncing around in my head that limited themselves, did not listen to that criticism, and maybe they were fine at the one thing that they did, at least ish, but they lived and died on that inaccessibility.
You have to be adaptable. You have to be flexible, and you have to grow with change. That's actually why I love the word era on these. It did almost to me sound a little like we were going back to our old speakers, which those who have been around with Sonos a while, we used to call things like ZP100 and ZP80. So it felt a little of that like nostalgia, which was really nice. But I love that we're calling it era, because that's kind of what we're in now. We're in this new era where we're adapting, we're changing, and this is literally in nomenclature showing that we're doing just that.
Yeah, it really feels just new.
Yeah.
Not saying, and that's not a new that says old is bad, but just an expansion, not a replacement, not a discarding. No, an evolution. Everything grows. And you see that not just in the spatial audio, but in the design language, and really in this tremendously expanded feature set.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm excited to see just how much of you guys love what you're listening to, love these speakers, and giving us feedback on it, because that's the next big thing for us is, what are we going to do next? Like that's, like I said, there's a lot of things out there that we could be doing, and it really does come down to what is the most prevalent or the most popular, and you guys are the ones that are going to help us figure that out. So don't be shy. You know, pick up your speaker today, tell us how it sounds, tell us what we could do doing better, or just tell us we love it. Because we, you know, I can't speak for all of Sonos, but I definitely love praise. So
That sounds good to me. So Era 100, we said this guy was coming in at a shockingly good price, or at least I certainly thought so. What do we got for Era 100?
Yes. So this actually comes in at $249. So what that means as a recap is we'll have the SL at $199. This will be $249. That's at $449, and then we'll have the 5 come in at $559 or $549. $549.
So nicely fleshes out the whole tiering of the pricing structure as well.
Exactly. Yep.
Nice.
And if you think about the step from 219 to 249, I do think that the value that you get out of this makes up more than that extra little jump you got to do in price. So to me, it's worth far more than what we've already attached price to it as. But again, that's a personal opinion.
Oh yeah, and even in the case of this one, that's not bad. You're getting so much more features, and you're getting a much more performant unit. One thing that I wanted to touch on again, and you did mention this a little bit, but I want to get into the meat and potatoes of TruePlay. I think room correction is one of the best technologies that currently exist. Not every implementation of it is amazing, but some are. And the ones that are, they are an immediate noticeable difference. Mm-hmm. And especially in situations now where we have these open floor plan houses with these hyper modern designs and everything is a hard surface and you can't seem to find a soft object anywhere. Acoustics is the first thing to suffer drastically. It's funny. I got to tell you, I have gotten spoiled working in this industry, and also with some of the recording and stuff that I do, having just a padded cell to record in, essentially, is what studios are. But ever since having that and working in this industry where we have treated rooms for listening and stuff, I go into some restaurants that are so echoey that like it really starts to bother me.
Yep.
And I've almost gotten spoiled by that. But the modern home is becoming more and more like that. And noise and just chaos of sound basically is an issue. And some of these room systems, they might not be the perfect solution, but anything helpful, and some of them very much so, can make a big difference. So tell me about how TruePlay works, a little bit more about it, how Sonos came up with that system, and just the why, if you will, of TruePlay.
Okay. I'll share what I know. So if there's someone at Sonos that has more information than me, feel free to correct me later. But my understanding of TruePlay as an evolution was, one, we recognized that there was a need for room correction in general. I mean, these obviously sound amazing outside the box, but when you know what space you're putting them in, because we learned from, history of speakers that when you manufacture something and give it to a customer, you've lost control over it. You have no idea where it's going to be placed. You don't know how it's going to be used. And that changes how things are done, especially since, like we were talking about, the little changes we made internally to make sound, the little changes in a room environment offer the same sort of changes to the sound as well. And so we said, okay, we got to figure out a way, since we technically through our app, like we're always connected to them.
Yeah.
We should be able to, if we have that connection, utilize it to be something that we can do to make the sound better. And TruePlay really came from, so we have something called the Board of Sound, and we have a lot of very prominent artists, producers, audio engineers in the movie industry that all actually listen to our things continuously. And give us feedback on saying, hey, this is how it's supposed to sound. This is how it changed. We're supposed to have a little more here. And they're constantly helping us make sure we're delivering on their sound. And so our goal was using what they know their sound's supposed to sound like is to help create a software, which they helped us kind of deduce, is this doing the right job on, by recreating what they wanted in the studio in your home. And so that's what the TruePlay really was born from, was the need to want to do that, or the want to want to do that, and having the right people in the right place to be able to bring it all together.
Nice.
And so we use them, and we're still using them today to help us assess every product we put in front of anyone. And from there, we created the software TruePlay, which I know I walked around. I said earlier, it's like walking around the room, like your Ghostbuster looking for cold spots. But what I'm implying on this is, or what I'm really saying is that we are creating a tone from the speaker in here, and it's happening super quickly. So we're talking 100 times a minute. And what it's doing is it's getting picked up by the microphone of the phone. So it knows from A to B, wherever I am in that room, I can get there with X in the way or reverberates off this much, or I know I bounced off the ceiling and it took me a lot longer because I have a vaulted ceiling, or I knew that there was something on that wall that actually absorbed the sound because I have a canvas painting there, or there is nothing there because we're talking about open concept, which is becoming a lot more popular too. So it's never coming back. It's gone on the outside of the house. So I have to adjust for that too. So now we are using the actual the microphone in the phone itself to communicate with this to kind of set the parameters and what this should be. Now, I will say for all of those audio enthusiasts, when we are doing that, the one thing that we do that's kind of neutral is bass. And that's on purpose because the general person honestly doesn't want a heavy bass.
Yeah.
I'm the exception to that rule. My partner can tell you that. I definitely want bass. That's not necessarily what they want all the time. But when we do that, we do neutralize it. So it is almost at a flat 0, even when you do true play. So if anyone ever wants it, you can actually go into the settings and adjust things on your own. So you can do a little extra tweak on top. And you can do that for both TV and music audio. And I like to actually go into the sub level on it and just bump up the sub a little bit. To just give me that little extra that I want. Which just, again, shows the little things that we're doing to make sound even better. So I'll cater it with true play to the room specifically, bump up the bass a little bit, and I'm a very happy man.
Sounds good to me. I tend to prefer that as well. They find, I think it was like Harmon or somebody did a big study, and they found most listeners like a little bit of a bass bump, maybe not tremendous, but just a little extra over flat. And that does seem to be true. Most people I talk to, they're like, yeah, just a little more bass. Perfect.
Yep. No, but we don't ever want to assume what your bass level is. So we're going to set it neutral. You tweak it to your own love, or to whatever you love it to be at. It's customized for you.
And while one thing that I think is cool about TruePlay, like you could argue the merits of using like a professional measurement microphone. Yeah, sure. But this just makes it so accessible for just anyone who buys Sonos. Just, the same thing you control your Sonos on, measure your room.
And it takes you, 45 seconds to do that. So actually in home theater, we have 2 steps into it. Usually when you're just walking around the room, that's for music and just for sound as a hole in that space to figure out where everything is and what the surfaces are. There's a second one that's actually for surround sound, where I sit in my favorite seat and I do the same thing. I'm holding the device that I started this whole thing on with, and I'm holding it in front of my face, and it's using that so everything's synced to my spot. So Dad's chair can really be Dad's chair in that room. Now that does not mean that it is pinpoint. So we do kind of focus on giving you, even the people on his left and right, his kids, his wife, whoever, they should be able to enjoy it too. So we kind of give you a bigger scope there. But yes, we are making sure that you're getting the best out of that system, no matter what kind of environment you put it in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving on from TruePlay, one of the other things I think about the eras that Sonos was setting out to do, build a product that's more efficient, more sustainable, lasts, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, it's, if you look at every company out, we're all trying to strive to hit that eco-friendly, we want to be as more conscientious about that as possible. I won't go too in the weeds on this, but I will say that it is something that we're aware of. We've set goals for ourselves. If you have any questions on what our goals are and what steps we've taken specifically, there's actually a website. It's sustainability.sonos.com, and on that you can actually see everything we've done. But just to highlight it here today, we in these particular eras, as an example, we have switched from adhesive to screws, which just means that we're able to take things apart a little bit better, do repairs, put them back together. So you're not having to junk out entire products, but just little pieces. So our commitment now is that we're just creating less waste. We've also changed the boxes too, where the boxes are even more recyclable. So we're at a point where I think it's almost 100%. As long as you take out the power cable and the product itself, I think you can literally just take the entire thing and just put it in the recycling. Flatten the boxes if you don't do that, just as a conscientious bystander on this one. But yes, we've made things as recyclable as possible. So it's just something we're aware of. We're trying to strive to. Obviously, it's not something that's easy, but we're working towards it.
Awesome. Now, also on that note of efficiency, eco, and all that, power consumption on these is down, at least when they're idling, right?
Yep. Yes. So it's actually something we learned from our portable speakers, and it's. Those actually go to sleep. So there's actually a sleep function on both the Roam and the Move. So I can cut out power consumption completely. And we did that more for battery saving, but we learned from that lesson that we can cut back on what we're doing on it. And so these actually are considerably less. If I'm comparing, and I'm sorry if I get the percentages wrong, but if I'm comparing the Sonos One to this guy, I do think it is something like a 35% drop on it. So it's a big deal. And that one's a little bit more actually. So you're talking, I think at idle, this one's like 3 to 5 and that one's like 4 to 8 or something like that. So
like virtually unnoticeable.
Correct.
Yeah, it's awesome. And even when these are playing, obviously they're going to pull a little bit more power than that, but you're using dedicated matched Class D amps. So really
Yep.
nothing is wasted,
Yeah, exactly.
which is fantastic. With the control of these devices, I mean, the app is virtually the same, which it should be because the Sonos app is basically as good as it gets. And no, I'm not just saying that because I'm live streaming with Sonos. I believe that the Sonos control app, it's just, that's how you make a good app. Okay. Now, physical control, I did mention that we have the volume slider here, and you were talking about how we still also just have the press. Anything else that changed up here, or just why they decided to rework this a little bit? And then I think also not a touch function, but on that Bluetooth, it's easy to access just with a button on the rear.
Yes. So yes, we learned from both Roam and Move. We took the 2 lessons. So just to kind of put a pin on what we talked about earlier, on Move we learned that the toggle button was the way to go, and on Roam we learned that the line in function on Bluetooth was the way to go. So we took both of those lessons and actually put them into this one, which I love because that shows, again, we're not just learning from what you guys give us as feedback, but we're learning from ourselves and what we've learned from our products as well. So we're always growing, always getting better. In this case, what we learned is that previously not everyone realized that there was actually a slide function on our other speakers. So
I don't think I even knew that.
yeah, so on Arc One, any of them that have the actual tactile button, so anything that kind of essentially came out after Play Bar, Play One, Play Three, those kind of ones, all have that different look. That slider actually was there dedicated to transition from tracks. So if I went one way, I could skip forward on a track. If I went the other way, I'd skip back. People didn't always engage with it because I don't think they knew it existed. And so what we've done instead is added that as actual buttons on the front. So you have carrots on both of these that'll allow you to do that accurately. Then we kept the pause play as well. So
fantastic.
Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah, the bar is just, I saw that and I immediately was like, that just makes sense.
And it gives you a little like resonance when you do it. So you can feel that you're changing it. So if you're starting really low and you're not positive that you're turning the volume up, you do feel it. So you are affecting change.
Yeah. And the tone that it gives you to indicate like it feels precise. And we got a comment. Mike says, I have to play one, but I feel like I'm missing out on spatial audio. Maybe.
Yes. And I will say, like, true spatial audio will come from the Era 300. This just does a really good job of kind of bridging the gap between the one and this one, in my opinion. So depending on how much you want to test it, Mike, I will say you should definitely listen to the 3, but it will overshadow this one a little bit for you.
Gotcha.
If that is your goal, if spatial audio is your true goal at the end.
Well, that would make sense because that was set out. You got the almost omnidirectional package going on here.
And we just so you guys know, we didn't design this just as a standalone option. Obviously, that's a huge impact on it, and it does sound amazing on its own, but it still has the same feature list as anything we've done that it falls into this all-in-one category, which means it can be used as stereo pairs. And more importantly, and I think this is the really big thing for the changes that we're talking about in the audio space and the evolution we're seeing. I referenced earlier that there's separate theaters dedicated to Atmos sound now. Like, you're paying a little bit more because it's a better experience, a bigger experience. On this one, we can recreate that even more accurately. So the Arc that we've had out was our first like real big foray into Atmos. We obviously have the Beam Gen 2, which does it as well, but more through software, not actually having the height drivers that Arc has on it.
Yeah.
But what that means is that when I actually put the Era 300 as rears on it, I now elevate what I can do with Atmos. So I actually take it from a 5.2.2 to a 7.2.4. So I'm now able to use those, and I really hope it is 0.4, and I didn't just misspeak, but I'm fairly certain. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone. But my understanding of this is all just adding to create an even more robust Atmos system. So we're now elevating not just what we're doing with our new product, but we're actually taking something that's already been existing. And if you don't have it already, it just gives you even more reason to do it and actually combine them to make it better.
Fantastic.
Definitely say Wiggity there. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Augustus says, how do the 300 sound as rears with the Arc? That is a good question. I have not thought about that yet either.
So that's kind of what we're talking about, how this elevates it. So I'm using the side drivers to actually facilitate our, potential 7-channel for when that comes up. I will say the way we operate is we don't take something and scale it up to match what Atmos is. So whatever content you're watching is what we're going to reproduce. So if it's just the news on local channels, no matter how many drivers you have, it'll still be stereo. It'll sound unbelievable, and it will elevate it to a massive room impact, but it is still stereo. If you're watching something, say on Netflix, or you have a dedicated Blu-ray player with a dedicated Blu-ray that does 7-channel Atmos and all that kind of stuff, you'll actually hear the difference on there. So again, because you're engaging them not just in and amplifying what already exists in terms of stereo is what we were just referencing, but actually in terms of Atmos, you're now engaging them in different ways, and it feels absolutely
You're really
immersive.
upscaling that to that upper dimension as well.
Yeah. So in my
which is
opinion,
awesome.
rears of 300 on ARC, it doesn't get any better from us. And then make sure you add a sub at all times, because
So that should be the standard now.
I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm I'm a little greedy with it because that's what I want, and hint hint Sonos, I want it. Oh wait, I'm talking to myself, so yeah, I have it.
That's awesome.
But yes, and then I will say, don't forget to add the sub. I know most of you guys are watching this are probably audiophiles, so you don't need me to explain to you the necessary need for a sub. But I will tell you, when you add it into a system like this, you're just telling the rest of the drivers, hey, don't worry about the low frequency. You take care of that. We're going to focus even more on what we're doing. And the impact is just amazing.
Oh yeah, I've noticed like with an ARC when you put a sub on it. Well, obviously the lows get better. Of course they do. That's the whole point. But no. Everything else gets better because you take that load off, and then the mid ranges and the ARC can just breathe, and suddenly they sound better too.
Yeah, I knew that there was something to that when I got the stamp of approval from my girlfriend. So I added a sub to the system more recently, and when she turned to me within like a day of having it and saying, "Oh man, this actually sounds better," and I was like, "Yep, all right, clearly we're onto something," because audio is not her, that's not what she does for a living. It's obviously what I do, but the fact that I got that stamp of approval, I was like, "Yep, we're on the right track. We're doing it right." What was the question? Sorry,
I got one there.
I see the.
Augustus again. He says, I game on my Series X in Dolby Atmos. Nice. However, I have SLs as rears already with my ARC. Should I upgrade as a gamer? Yes.
Yes. So, and thank you for giving me that idea, because she's going to hate it, but I have some of those pieces, but what I haven't done is the Dolby Atmos in the gaming room, aka the guest bedroom. So I may have to take your advice and actually scale up and use that for myself. So thank you.
And that would make sense because modern game mixes are actually some of the best sound design going around right now. So they will be able to utilize that.
Absolutely. And especially now that even more content on gaming is coming out that way, you're able to utilize it, not just with some of the newer stuff, but a lot of things that have been around for a few years are still utilizing just surround sound as a whole, let alone Atmos. So I will say, especially if you're doing something like Call of Duty or any of those like first person online games,
where spatiality helps you win.
Correct. Yes. You hear people coming.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I almost forgot about. I wanted to ask you to touch a little on voice control. Okay. And specifically the Sonos voice control, which is not exactly brand spanking new, but relatively speaking, yeah.
Well, I will say we did it different than anyone else, which is why we still work concurrently with all of them, because they will deliver on things that we just don't want to touch on. So honestly, it's great to have all of those options together. But what we're talking about specifically with our devices is our Sonos voice control. So we're going to have Alexa enabled on these. I will say right now we don't have Google, but that's because they've updated requirements. We're working towards that. So
that's a Google problem.
That's a software thing. That can be fixed in the future. So if you have these products and you want it at some point, all we need is a software update. Working with them to figure out what that looks like, and you'll have it. So it's not like you will miss it right away. You will get access to it. But circling back, we do have our own Sonos voice control, and what makes it so different from what anyone else is doing is, one, we are localized. So everybody else uses a cloud server to support theirs, which is awesome because it means they can access anything the cloud can access and gives you a lot of features. We aren't doing that. We're dedicated to just controlling our system. And by having it localized, what that means is we've cut out a lot of latency that happens. And so ours ends up being a lot faster because it's just doing a small feature list. It's a lot more reliable. And I can do things with it like group and ungroup, volume change, source change, and I can do it almost organically because we've kind of understood that you need to have more of an organic instead of a structured sentence pattern to make it happen. Yeah. So as long as you know some of the keywords you need, like the room name and stuff, you can engage it. And for us too, the other fun thing is that we decided not to use some sort of like computer sounding voice. Although there were I will admit there were some alterations at the end, but we actually went and hired a famous actor to do our voices. So we hired Giancarlo Esposito.
Yep. Cool dude. Great actor.
Yes. Amazing actor. If you don't know him, he's oh god, it's the chicken shop in Breaking Bad. I cannot think.
I can't think of the character's name either. But Breaking Bad or Moff Gideon and Mandalorian.
Yeah. Yes. So he's involved in a lot of stuff, but he took his time and it took time out of his schedule during COVID and sat down in studio with us and really cared about making sure we got this right and did it. Yes, Gus. That's what
Gus. Thank you.
Thank you. Gus like Freeling or something, right? Something like that. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Clearly, I haven't watched the show enough, but
Yeah, me
he
neither.
sat in the studio and just went as long as we needed to figure out all the lines that we wanted. And because of him, now we have an amazing sounding experience, not just one that works really, really well. So I will say his
And
voice
he is
is
vocally gifted.
yes, and that his voice is so velvety smooth, like so smooth. So
Maybe one day they'll want my voice as much as they want his. Maybe one day.
yeah.
But no, that was a great choice. It really was.
Oh, but our goal is just to keep compounding on that too and making it better. So we aren't just stopping with something that controls our system, does it reliably, does it locally, but we also want to keep making it better and better over time. So
Absolutely. I think that's everything we pretty much wanted to cover.
yeah, unless you had any questions about Sonos as a whole. Or any
I think we
questions
got
about
'em.
me personally, you know. I know we know
Speaking
each
of
other, but
speaking of more questions, if anyone has any additional questions, now is the time because we'll be getting ready to wrap up here. So, anybody else thinking of anything, drop it in there. The other thing that I need to mention to you, I almost forgot about this one. Thank you.
it's really important. I can't
And
believe
it
you
is very
forgot.
important. I know. You guys are wondering about the Era 300. Well, what if you can just have one? We're going to be doing a giveaway of the 300. You can go to Gramophone's website, follow the link. You can go to Gramophone's website and sign up there, or just click down below. We're going to post a link down there, and you can do it there as well. So, you want to know about spatial audio? Well, what if you won one and then you just knew?
Yeah,
There you go.
now you've learned from experience. And as promised, I figure we'd give them a couple options to listen to. So when you guys get your Era 300 in the giveaway, you know exactly what content to start with to listen to it. I will say out of the gate, the only two services that we're going to have that'll actually give you Atmos music content is going to come from Amazon and Apple. So Amazon has spatial audio, 360, whatever Sony calls it. I think they call it 360 audio.
360, yeah, that's
yeah,
it.
something like that. And then they'll also have Dolby Atmos. Amazon will have their own spatial audio. But on both of those, there's definitely some great tracks on them. And I don't know if you've had a chance to kind of.
The only one that I've really been able to mess around with, and frankly, I need to do it more on the Sonos platform now that it's here, but I have it home on my surrounds. Apple Music with Dolby Atmos is shockingly good.
Yes.
I was actually taken aback by how good it is. Like I thought, okay, this will be a nice gimmick. No, this is it. It's real.
No, and what I love is that you're going to see, so like some of the guys that actually sit on our soundboard are actually responsible for some of the older tracks that have been updated into newer ones that have actually been remastered into Atmos. One of them actually, if you look at the Super Deluxe album for the Beatles, you'll see that a lot of those tracks were actually remastered in Atmos. And I will pledge that if you listen to Come Together on the Era 300 on its own, or even in the full Arc Rear Era 300 system, it is a song you've heard 1,000 times that I guarantee you doesn't sound anything like you're used to and sounds amazing. Unless you happen to hear it in person, that might have been the best experience.
I have heard some of the remasters that have been redone in Atmos or whatever brand of spatial we're talking about. And it is really amazing what they've been able to do with stuff that is that old. Like it sounds like something that you would have thought just as a layperson that they would have had to completely re-record and redo from scratch, but they haven't. And it really has worked. Like whoever Dolby's got doing this stuff, they are clearly very experienced, good mastering engineers. I'm going to tell you how I know that. I have noticed that Dolby tracks have notably less noise floor than stereo tracks.
Huh.
And so someone really knows what they're doing.
I never stopped to pay attention to that, but I don't think I can say anything against that.
Yeah, like that's one of the things I noticed quickly, and I was like, these are good engineers.
I will say I am super thankful that they're partners of ours. So they actually listen to our stuff too to give us feedback. So they're all part of what we call that soundboard. So whenever we design anything, they're one of the first to listen to it to make sure we're doing something right. So thank you, Dolby.
Yes, thank you, Dolby. Thank you very much, in fact.
And I'll leave you with one last track. So we were talking about Apple, but on Amazon, Elton John actually did a re-update on a lot of his songs too. And the one that I think had the most has the most resonance for me anyway is Rocket Man. Again, a song we've heard 1,000 times, but it's one of those ones that builds every 30 seconds. And when you hear the levels add and you hear it on the Era 300, every time it just adds on top. You're just getting this, oh my God, I'm hearing things from left and right, even further and further, bigger up. And you're just, by the end of it, and you're 2 minutes in, you're completely immersed in the song. And you almost feel like you were there when he was producing it in the studio in the first place. So it's incredible. So
another one that I got, and this is on an album that is a little bit newer, so it was actually made with this stuff in mind. So it maximizes on it a little bit. The Weeknd's latest album, Dawn FM,
that
is amazing in Atmos. Amazing.
I will
So
say
check that
that
out
one
too.
and Imagine Dragons. So their new one,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Mercury 1, Mercury 2,
Yep.
which I've only ever heard an EP from it, but it's Sharks. Lyrically, it is one of the funniest songs I've ever heard. I always enjoy listening to it. But
That's good.
it is such a clean song that when you listen to it on this, you really understand the impact of it. Not to mention the bass level on the Era 300 is so good that that song really does showcase what that does. And I gotta tell you, it surprises me every time I listen to it. I've heard it 50 times on it, and I'm still surprised every time when it kicks in.
I'm going to try that one out. That's awesome. Well, guys, we're going to get ready to wrap here. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us and watching. We certainly both hope that you learned something and that you had fun. Again, don't forget about the giveaway of that Era 300. Links will be down below. And even if you don't win the giveaway, we are going to have the new Sonos product on display. So come to the showrooms and see it. Again, that is Columbia, Timonium, in Gaithersburg, Maryland. So stop by, come visit us. We'll make sure that you find the right thing, but probably going to be some Era stuff. And with that said, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can keep hanging out with us here too. All right, guys, once again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're really happy that you all swung by, and we'll be seeing you.